using fear to stimulate people coming out at the polls.
And that was Janae Norman reporting. Let's debate this with tonight's panel. Brad Polumbo joins us from Springfield, Massachusetts. He's an online contributor to the National Review and an assistant editor with Young Voices. And Jennifer Kerns is a Republican strategist and contributor to The Hill. Jennifer, is it wise for President Trump to focus so heavily on immigration when you have such great economic news that the Republicans and President Trump could be driving as the final theme this weekend?
Well, I think that the estimation from the White House is that folks are already feeling comfortable with the economic news. I think people are asking themselves, are they better off than they were 2 years ago? And the answer is clearly yes. If you look at women's unemployment, it's at a 17-year low. Stock market is at record highs, and so on and so forth. But I think the White House also knows what we in news know, which is if it bleeds, it leads. And so I think the economic news might not be as sexy a topic as they would like to get people out to the polls. But I think there's comfortability with the economy. But I do think that the safety and security issue does play very well with independents and suburban moms. So as you saw in the report there, they said this might be scaring away independents. Actually, we've seen some numbers that are opposite. So if you look at a Harvard University Harris poll earlier this year, certainly not a conservative poll, I think we can all agree, they showed that independents actually across the board, these were likely voters, independents, Democrats, and Republicans, 65% of them actually supported Donald Trump's proposal to do a DACA deal that would eliminate the visa lottery, would eliminate chain migration, and would actually build more structures along the border, aka a wall. And the numbers are pretty high for independents. I think that is where the White House is going with this. They know that this issue, despite how unpopular it might seem, it actually does play well with women voters and independent voters who care about security.
Brad, how about it? Do women voters, independent voters, do they believe that there's a horde of 7,000 illegal immigrants that are about to rush the border in Mexico, and therefore this is all resonating with them?
No, I don't think so at all. I think independents and American voters in general are not convinced by the far-right immigration attacks that the president's been throwing out the last week. You know, the American people don't want to take away birthright citizenship. They don't believe that the caravan is an invasion. And beyond that, I mean, the president is distracting from the most important message that he should be campaigning on. He just had a fantastic third quarter of economic growth, a great fourth quarter of economic growth too, a fantastic October jobs report, at record low unemployment right now. All of these things in part because of his strong tax cuts, deregulatory agenda, some real successes there. He also just got his second Supreme Court nominee confirmed. We're not talking about any of that because he wants to tweet out racially inflammatory ads about immigrants. This is all a mistake.
Well, Brad, is there a problem, though, if the president were to focus on the tax cuts? Because most of the polling shows that most Americans believe that the tax cuts benefited primarily the wealthiest Americans and not so much the working class. And so perhaps by avoiding the tax cuts, by avoiding the economic focus, Republicans are not having to deal with that and instead can go to, as Jennifer was pointing out, an issue that would certainly drive enthusiasm, which is immigration.
Well, it will certainly drive enthusiasm among the Trump base, but we have to remember that that's only about 30% of the country, and they're not going to be the most important voters in these battleground states. You know, I would hate to be one of the incumbent GOP congressmen who's running for re-election in a district that Hillary Clinton won in 2016, right? Because in these moderate swing districts, the president's far-right rhetoric on immigration is not doing you any favors. So he can pivot to immigration all he likes, but he is distracting from his strongest asset, which is the economy. Tax cuts or not, it is the economy. So this immigration platform that he's pushing is just getting more and more extreme, and it's moving him away from the American voter.
Well, there's no doubt about it. The polls are very close. I think Tuesday night is going to be too close to call. But we look at some other key polls of independents. There's a Rasmussen poll out. Reminder that Rasmussen was only one of 3 pollsters to get the 2016 presidential elections right. They have it at 56% of independents believing that it's the families bringing the kids to the border that are helping create the crisis, not the Trump administration. You also saw a really interesting poll in California, David, the PPI FDIC poll, again, not a conservative poll. 2/3 of independents there believe that the sanctuary state was a failure. We've never seen a number like that.
There are a lot of sophisticated, I think, even Republican voters and independent voters who are out there who they know that this caravan, these families that are coming up, they're still 900 miles away from the U.S.-Mexico border. When they've been told, they know that these people are walking, they're not going to arrive until December. So when they hear the president saying, we need to put 15,000 troops along the border, that's more than we have fighting Islamic State or battling the Taliban in Afghanistan. Isn't that a bit of a stretch for a lot of these sophisticated independent voters?
I think there was a key video that was released today. Some of the folks in the caravan, mostly men, mostly presumably with criminal backgrounds, throwing Molotov cocktails and rocks at the propeller blades of helicopters that had security inside that were monitoring the border. Those are the kind of people we don't want in our neighborhoods. And here's the thing. It's not racist.
I'm not familiar with the video, but in any case.
It's not racist to suggest this. What we know is that illegal immigrants, they go into minority communities first. I think it's actually racist to suggest that we ought to allow these illegal immigrants, many of whom are criminals. You look at FBI crime statistics in Los Angeles alone, 75% of the arrest warrants in Los Angeles County are for illegal immigrants.
But the same crime statistics show that nationwide illegal immigrants commit crimes at a lower rate than the population at large in the United States. The idea that the illegal immigrants are more responsible for crime as a percentage is wrong. But in any case, Bradley, how about it? There is a fear, whether it's legitimate or not, it is certainly an identifiable fear that people have going into this midterms about immigration and that the immigration and the border is not secure.
Yeah, well, I think people do not need to be nearly as worried about immigration as they may be, right? Because I think it's not true that most of these people in the caravan have criminal records. There's no evidence to suggest that. And like you said, immigrants, legal and illegal, actually commit crimes at lower rates than native-born American citizens. So this is not something we need to get worked up about. In large part, most of the immigrants who come here through the asylum process, remember the caravan, who President Trump says are invaders, they're coming to apply for legal asylum. So the legal immigrants, illegal immigrants, there's no need to be fear-mongering about them, especially with borderline racist ads like the president tweeted out the other day. We're using the actions of one bad illegal immigrant to smear an entire group, an entire ethnic group.
But what we know about asylum is that customarily they are to seek asylum in the first safest country nearby. The Trump administration has wisely been working very closely with Mexico on that, making sure that the Mexican government could take them in. They are bypassing that country, and they still want to come to the U.S. There's a reason for that.
The United States over Mexico, and the fact is, it is U.S. law that if they apply for asylum at the United States, they're entitled to a hearing.
Right. But look, here, going back to the vote. Here's what I think suburban women voters care about. Human beings aren't the only people coming across the border. You have illegal drugs. You look at the opioid crisis in America. We've seen the statistics that the number of prescription drugs, opioid addictions have gone down in recent years. But what has increased is the illegal fentanyl coming over from Mexico.
Well, I would agree with you that the opioid issue is, and I would agree that opioid is perhaps one of these issues that is not understood as well as it should be, and should be a bigger political issue. But again, I think it's getting buried by some of the rhetoric that Brad was talking about that we're hearing from President Trump. But in any case, Brad Polumbo and also Jen Kerns, thank you both so much for coming on. A great debate among Republicans.
Thanks.
We appreciate you coming on.